to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard A. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater, who is not here today. It is Monday, February 10th, 2025. Follow us on youtube.com/Gaming Discourse, patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. You can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more. I'm working on a review of Eternal Strands still. It's going good. It's getting long. I never really know how long that reviews are going to be and stuff like that. But Eternal Strands I've had sort of a weird time with, because I don't want to say mixed feelings doesn't accurately like catch what I feel about it. Mm-hmm. It's just a really interesting game because it's ambitious, but it doesn't deliver on a lot of its ambitions. But at the same time, it feels like in one of the in my script, I say that it feels old but not antiquated in some areas. Okay, like it's kind of one of those games that I think we're all experiencing that kind of feels like a throwback to sort of a PS2, maybe PS3, 360 era game, but it doesn't feel antiquated in that it's boring or bad, right? It just it feels like a bit of an older style, just in how, I don't know, even though it also at the same time is very modern. It's kind of hard to describe, but so I'm organizing all those jumbled and complex thoughts in a review, and hopefully I'll have it done soon. Got some writing done today. Hopefully I'll have a big writing day tomorrow, and then I'll maybe get a video review out by the end of this week. I'll have to see. That'll be close. It's probably early next week. But patrons will know for sure come Wednesday, Thursday when I do our weekly update. But other than that, I've been playing a couple other games. So you haven't had time? We were talking a little bit before.
No, I've dabbled in more Marvel Rivals a little bit. My PS Plus ran out.
Everybody's did.
Everybody's
over the weekend.
and they I think they give like 5 extra days, but I don't know if that works for people who don't have a subscription because mine ran out before the thing. Mm-hmm. So and then I played a little more Ninja Gaiden Sigma, which something happened the next time I played it. It just clicked. And not that it didn't, like, not that I couldn't play it before, mm-hmm. but something happened to where there was a flow that came through me, and I kind of felt like Neo, and I was like, I get it.
Yep. You know, like an aha moment.
Yeah, yep. I still didn't it's not like I played perfectly or anything, but I understood what the gist was as far as like how to approach enemies or attacks and whatnot. And so that became slightly more enjoyable. Flintlock became less enjoyable. And I don't think, I just bounced off it. That's it. Mm. That's all it was. I still look at it and kind of have that like squint and point and like there's something. Yeah. There's something there. Like, and I want to find it, and I might if I give it a shot again later. But I'm kind of just waiting for my wife to get back home so I can start Indiana Jones, because like I said, she's a huge Indiana Jones fan. And then South of Midnight, I think that's just like wait for that. I'm not trying to make that game the thing to bring me out of fatigue, but that just looks such a good game. Yeah. And I hope it is good. I hope Compulsion knocks it out of the park. But yeah, that's all I've been doing.
Yep. So I'm kind of in a similar boat because I'm super excited for Avowed.
Avowed comes out too.
Pillars of Eternity is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. Pillars 2 is good, not as good as the first one, but not bad.
How dare you?
But the world, the gods, the lore, the story, the characters, the writing is excellent. So just Pillars is just some of my favorite stuff. Avowed obviously is going to be an isometric RPG. It's first person, so it's going to be mechanically different, but it's going to be really cool to get back to that world. The gods in Avowed are not omnipotent. They are it reminds me a lot of Hades in a way. They are very they have personalities and they talk. So in the Pillars of Eternity games, you play as you're a watcher, which is a character who can see. So it's kind of complicated because it has to do with the lore and stuff. But basically in Pillars, souls, when you die, your soul exits your body. And I think it takes a lot from like Buddhism, maybe Hinduism. I'm not too familiar with how like reincarnation works, but it's reincarnation where your soul sort of leaves your body. It goes through pillars, the earth, I forget exactly. And then it enters another body when somebody's born.
Okay.
So it's like that new person is completely different. They don't have your memories or anything, but your soul sort of becomes a different person. A watcher, the person that you play in Pillars of Eternity, can sort of see your past lives. They can sort of read your soul in that way. But because you are this person with this extraordinary ability, the gods sort of take interest in you. And so you commune and talk with the gods a lot. And the gods are very human because they're gods of different things. So like there's the god of the sea, the god of secrets, all these different gods. They speak different ways and they have distinct personalities. And so when you, especially in Pillars 2, when you talk with them, when you commune with them, it's really cool because it's like you were talking to these super powerful beings, but they're not omnipotent, so they just can't kill you off. So it's like, you know, they're much more powerful than you are, but
not undefeatable.
Not undefeatable, and they also, in some ways, they need you to help them out.
Oh, right.
So it's like you can sort of talk back and be mean to them and give them shit.
Okay.
But they can't just, you know, wipe you off the earth like maybe in other stories or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, I'm super excited for Avowed. But between finishing Veilguard, I wanted to see if I could sneak in the first Mass Effect, because Connor kept talking about Mass Effect all the time, and it made me want to go back and play it. And so, yeah, I don't know how far I'm into it. I'm on the mission where either Ashley or Caden dies. You have to pick one. I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick Ashley.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Just because in my first playthrough, which I don't remember a whole lot, I picked Caden to die. But Caden's a cool character. I think Caden's one of the better written characters of the first game.
I think Caden is, I'm not going to say misunderstood, but of course people have the reaction to him that he's a scout, you know.
Scout?
Not a scout. Oh my God.
A spy.
No. Oh, I can't believe it. Boy Scout.
Oh, like he's a goody two shoes type character.
Goody two shoes. He's by the books number,
okay.
But I think,
can see that a little bit.
Yeah, and so people kind of write him off as boring, and I can understand, but I think boring, at least in this, compared to everyone else you have, having somebody around who's kind of just normal. Yeah. I think that's needed.
He's sort of the control group.
Yes, yeah. Because Ashley is not normal.
Yeah, she's
depending on, she's not normal. But she has flaws which do get better as you go along, but they really made it an obvious choice as to like who you'd want to pick if you didn't want to decide to dig into who they can become in the later games.
Well, the interesting thing about Caden is that because Caden is, which I had forgotten so much about Mass Effect lore, but like biotics, if you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you, aren't biotics just like a technical like I'd totally forgotten that biotics apparently are, it's like people get hit with some kind of radiation or something before they're born or while their mother is pregnant, and that changes the cells in their bodies. It's a very sci-fi way of giving people essentially magic.
Yeah.
But it's like they can manipulate dark energy to create Mass Effect fields, and that's what their biotic powers are. So that's where biotics come from. But Caden is a biotic, and he sort of has stories about when he joined the military and he got sent to like biotic camp and they were abused, and he like stood up to his superior officer and stuff like that. So I think his character's neat because he comes from he's someone who survived like a traumatic experience of going through this like ridiculous abusive training. But now instead of being in a place where that manifests into him being like a killing machine, it's like he sort of is in control of those emotions.
Basically the opposite of Raiden.
Yes. I obviously I'll have to get to know him a little bit more, but I think he's pretty cool. Why can't Garrus? So Garrus did the thing that I thought the game would do. The first Mass Effect is pretty rough with some of the writing. it's like, Garrus will be like, I wanted to, this criminal of mine got away in a ship full of hostages. I wanted to shoot that ship down. And I'm like, Garrus, you can't destroy a ship full of hostages to get a criminal. And Garrus is like, you're right, Shepard.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it takes.
Wow, what was I thinking?
Yeah, exactly. That's all it takes. So I guess he's a nice guy if, at one point he's ready to murder people and all you got to say is, Garrus, I don't know, man. And he's like, you're right, Shepard. Like, okay, cool. But I understand what the game's trying to do. It's trying to show that he goes from, he's a cop out for revenge who is willing to, cause collateral damage and stuff like that. And, he's supposed to evolve into somebody who he's seeking justice, not revenge. And justice is much more complicated. It's not necessarily elegant in writing that, but it is something. Rex is a similar case because Rex, he's a Krogan. He also comes from a harsh background where, someone tried to kill him and he's been a mercenary for a long time. And he also, but he has this sincere belief about what is wrong, which is the genophage, which is what would be the term? Holocaust, I'm not sure how to describe it. Holocaustian, I guess, is the word, because the idea is that it kills the entire race, the Krogan, right?
Yeah.
It stops them from breeding, so they slowly die out or whatever. And so he has this so he's very rough on the outside. He murders people, you see him murder a guy.
Yeah.
So he's definitely not a moral person, at least in that one instance. But underneath that, he has this just cause that I think makes his character more interesting because he's not just a bloodthirsty mercenary. He partially is, but he is fighting to right an immorality in the galaxy, which is cool. And when you stand down, when you talk with him at Vermeer and he points his gun at you, because there's another doctor there who is doing work on the genophage. That's a really cool scene that I like. And if you're able to talk him down, and you kind of gain his respect, that's neat. But overall, and Ashley is naive. She's, I think overall the galaxy itself is sort of prejudiced. It kind of reminds me of Star Trek Enterprise. So in Star Trek Enterprise, if you've ever seen it, Scott Bakula.
Yeah.
It's right when humanity, the NX-01 is the first Enterprise. So it's the first ship that goes out. It's a really nice warp capable ship. So in Star Trek, the idea is it's a humanity where we've gotten past our petty racism and sexisms and transphobias and all that bad stuff. But in Enterprise, it's an earlier humanity. So one of the things, the show is incredibly flawed, but one of the things I always liked was that it portrayed a humanity that still had some of the remnants of those things. And partially it was because the Vulcans specifically, instead of being on par and sort of equal with the humans, the Vulcans they kind of condescended to the humans. They're like, you're this new species with warp technology, but you don't really know what you're doing. So we're going to be here to sort of, we'll tell you what to do and when you can do it and stuff. And Archer doesn't like that, Captain Archer, because he's like, humanity should go out and take a stake in the galaxy for itself. Why do we have to listen to the Vulcans? So it's a very different galaxy where instead of everybody being nice and Federation and Picardy, everybody's kind of suspicious of each other and doesn't like each other. And that's what Mass Effect is like. Mass Effect, the Turians don't like the humans because there was the war. Obviously,
the Krogan
don't like anybody.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah, Solarians, and then nobody likes the Tali's race. I forget Tali's race because they made the Geth. So it's everybody kind of has a bone to pick with every other race. So when a character is racist or something like that, I think partially that is demonstrating the state of politics and prejudices in the galaxy. So I appreciate that. because it's one thing just to have a character that's racist. It's another thing to have a character that's racist, but it's baked into this complex web of history and politics in a galaxy that makes it more believable and real and like meatier and something you can really dig into. And when you talk it down or when people evolve out from that, I think it's more satisfying because it's not just one person. Because yes, like people who are just racist on their own exist, but like the more complex problems are systemic prejudices and these sort of things that are baked into social fabric. And I think that's partially kind of what Mass Effect is showing, which I think it does fairly well. But yeah, some of the dialogue is pretty rough, and it is funny going back to see how dialogue has evolved because there's this pro ZD video where the title is just something like when the dialogue isn't what you expect.
Right. Yeah.
And Song One, I think is his name.
Song One.
He holds up a piece of paper and it says press Y for hello, and he hits Y, and his character goes, "Hi, fucker, I'm gonna murder your whole family." And you're like, what? There's a lot of that in the first Mass Effect where it's like, that's a bad idea. Oh, okay, that's nice, that's easy, you know, and you click on it and Shepard's like, are you an idiot? I'm like, oh my god, I didn't want to insult the guy. So there's a lot of that, but that's okay. It's cool to experience the story knowing what the Reapers are and stuff like that, because back then, when everyone's playing through the Mass Effect games for the first time, the Reapers were this thing you learn about, and it's like...
You don't see them until the second game, right?
Yeah.
Like halfway through the second game.
I don't think so. And so it's like, they're this like weird thing that's... It's like, well, where are these Reapers? What, they come to the galaxy and kill civilizations? Like, it just seems so distant and odd until it becomes a real threat later on. So in the first game, it just feels so... Like you're still figuring out that mystery, that suspense, I guess, of trying to stop Saren and figure out what Saren is doing. So that's cool. Yeah, I think it put into context for me Starfield, because I don't know, you land on a planet, you drive around a little mini open world.
Yeah. It's
pretty repetitive, and it's not all that... It's pretty, all the maps kind of feel the same because they're all just random mountains everywhere. There's no like geological diversity, but it's like, yeah, this is Mass Effect came out in 2007, I think. And it's basically doing, for 2007, it's doing as much as they could do in 2007. It's doing what Starfield did in 2022 or whenever Starfield came out. Starfield's kind of the same thing. You land on planets. It's repetitive. So it's just like, okay.
That is right. Yeah. When you're going around in the Mako. Yeah.
Yeah.
Things are...
But one of them was released in 2007.
Yes.
The other one was 2022. So it's a little bit different. And obviously there's more you can do in Star. The point I'm trying to make here is it feels like, I don't know, some of those ideas. It's interesting when you play older games and you realize how ideas you feel like are newer are not new at all.
Right.
They just haven't been implemented, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
I've had the same because there's what was I? Oh yes. So I saw a Saturday Night Live clip of a recent episode within the last X amount of years. And in the comments, people were like, oh, this is the same sketch as like this one from like 15 years earlier. And my immediate thought was like, yes, you can do that because within 15 years, people have forgotten that skit, so you can regurgitate it again. So sure. There are ideas that, not to say Starfield, should have just regurgitated like basic, exploration on top of a planet, like surface level planets. But yeah, to see that it is comparable to something from 2007 is different context when it comes to video games, like with other types of media, very easily forgettable, but video games, people remember those fairly easily. I've come to like find out.
Yeah, and it's not that. Obviously, Starfield does a lot more. Like you can't fly the Normandy in Mass Effect. It's essentially just a map. It's a hub that whatever. But I guess just the concept of landing on a planet in a buggy, driving around, you get out, you do a mission, you get back in, there's resources for you to collect. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, okay, this was done in 2007, and there's a bunch more in Starfield, but it just hasn't been it wasn't iterated on really as much as it could have been, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to think, if I made Mass Effect's mini open worlds planet-sized, what could I add to make it more interesting? And it's surprising to me that there's just not a lot there. Games like Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky, I think, are different contexts. Star Citizen is also a different context because they're not really doing, I don't know, they're doing different things. Elite Dangerous is more of like a simulator. So you don't get to build bases on those planets because you're not someone who gets to build bases. You're just a mercenary with a ship, basically. Well, I guess you can have carrier fleets now. But, and then No Man's Sky is like an open world survival thing that has evolved. But I don't know. The point I was trying to make is I was just playing I was messing around with the Mako doing some of those missions. And I was just like, man, this just feels like, I don't know, if it made me like Starfield less. Because I was like, when I play these missions with the Mako, it's like, if you sat out to do this, and maybe Mass Effect Andromeda did this to some respect, I don't really remember, but it's like, if you set out to do this thing today and you iterated on it and you said, okay, we did this in 2007, what can we do now with the Mako or Mako or whatever? It's like, oh, well, maybe we could put in that there's islands you could go to and it's an amphibious vehicle, or you remove loading screens. So when you go into these little bases, you don't have to load. Maybe you put a few settlements here and there. Maybe, I don't know, you get bounties. Maybe you put more vegetate. Like there's things that you could iterate from that. And yeah, I think about how Starfield didn't do any of that. Yeah. It really, yeah, I don't want to turn this into Duncan on Starfield a whole bunch. It's the greatest game ever made.
I did plan on playing it soon.
Game of the year. Game of the year. Starfield every year.
Agreed.
I don't know if there's anything else I want to talk about. Yeah, basically been playing that and just waiting for Avowed, which I'm super excited for. And
was it 8 more days?
Yeah.
6 more days?
3 more if you pre-order it.
What did you do?
I'm just gonna buy it day it comes out. I'm not gonna pre-order it. Right. I'm somewhat tempted because you get a little map, but I don't know. But
you get to play it 3 days early.
You do, but I'm in the middle of Mass Effect, so
oh, there you go.
What am I gonna do? Oh, you know what? There was something else about Mass Effect, but now it's kind of escaping me. Oh, so I do think the politics of being a Spectre are also really interesting, and I'm curious to see what they do with this in Mass Effect 2, because Spectres are like above the law, and Shepard knows this. So it's like, how does Shepard leverage that in certain situations? Because you're this spec ops officer that, you're like a splinter cell, is sort of given a lot of autonomy to do whatever it takes to finish a mission or whatever. And I think that's obviously hugely political, because if you're a country that employs that sort of operative, then you're probably in a position where you can afford, a smaller country probably can't do that, because if that operative gets captured, the smaller country does not have the resources or the weapons or the military to say, what are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. Like the United States probably has. So that's interesting. And also, like, you meet Solarian special forces when you attack Vermeer, and they have a interesting little, like, there are these commandos that are also like Black Ops operatives. So there's a lot more military, like political military stuff in Mass Effect that I had completely forgotten about.
They definitely gloss over it,
because you're not just playing as like a soldier, you're playing as a soldier with a certain amount of like political autonomy backing them up, that puts you in morally gray situations where you can do things that in a democracy probably aren't good.
Yeah.
But anyway, and considering the time it came out in, right as like the war in Iraq was, like, the public opinion was starting to turn against it and stuff like that, or probably it started a couple of years beforehand. I don't know. It's just interesting to think about, just because it's like how the public perception of, well, I guess the public perception of the military wasn't that different. It was just the perception of the war itself. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I'm trying to connect those things. It's just interesting to me that you have this game that came out, because when we think about space, I don't always think about it being military fiction. I don't know. It's space. It's science fiction.
Yeah.
So, but it really lays it on heavy in Mass Effect, which is interesting. So anyway, I've rambled enough. Are you ready for the ad?
Yeah, let's do it.
Get the news. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Okay, the CEO of Saber Interactive thinks big game budgets are going to end. This is according to Stephen Totilo, who spoke with Matthew Karch on his private jet back in December. It was an interesting story about Totilo was like, I'm going to talk to this gaming CEO, and ended up having a flight on his private jet, which is interesting. But the couple of quotes here that Karch said that made the rounds, I'm going to read. Quote, I think that the age of the 200 million, 300 million, 400 million AAA game is on its way out. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't know how best to put it. I think if anything has contributed more to the loss of jobs, it's the multi-$100 million budget. We can make games like Space Marine. You're not going to tell me it doesn't have to have AAA. It doesn't have a AAA vibe to it. You may say, oh, it's a AA plus. It's a solid game. Its budget was a quarter of what anyone else would spend, which I think is really interesting. Karch said the multi-$100 budget has led to more layoffs than anything else. But there's a line. Oh yeah, and he says that part of Space Marine 2's success was that it didn't nickel and dime players, which I think was interesting for a few reasons. But I don't know. So this is a gaming CEO who's coming off a pretty successful year with Space Marine 2, saying something that I think everybody kind of knows, and I think is really interesting. And I guess the question is, would the industry act on it? If I don't know if this is something that's like, okay, there are executives that know it. So will we see change?
Yeah, I feel like we should have already, because there's been more than enough examples within the last 3 to 5 years of games that were made on quite a lower budget compared to other games that have reaped in more rewards than anything. Like Power Wash Simulator is one. Obviously, the runaway hits like Content Warning and I can never remember the other one.
Oh, Lethal Company.
Lethal Company, yeah. And then you have, of course, like last year's Game of the Year, Astrobot. Like I'm sure that game did not cost $100 million to make. But yes, these companies should have been doing this already, focusing on these lower titles. But something happens along the way, and they either fumble marketing or they just fumble trying to get the word out to consumers about it, because you get games that are supposedly excellent that come out and nobody buys. Prince of Persia 2 Crown, or The Lost Crown, is a good example, and I don't have another example right now. I'm sorry, but I think that it's a lesson that should have been learned a long time ago, still hasn't, and I think everyone, or at least these big companies, are just kind of waiting on Grand Theft Auto 6.
Yeah, for like
that. The gaming community and the gaming industry has kind of created this invisible like threshold line, and GTA 6 like sits right there. And even I think it's on the notes here later, but yes, Strauss Zelnick, Take-Two. It's like, yeah, GTA 6, that's going to entice people to buy consoles.
Yeah, going to be a console seller, which would be interesting to see if it actually happens.
Yeah, and they're not the only ones to say that. Other people have said that as well.
Yeah.
But why should a game dictate? Well, yes, games should dictate if you buy a new console, but why should this game be the one that dictates it?
Yeah, I mean, because who knows how good GTA is. I think it's a problem that the industry has to rely on a game whose sequel, a sequel to a game that came out 10 years, more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
That game is going to somehow, like, on its own inject capital. That's not sustainable.
Right.
We can't rely on Rockstar every 10 years to release a sequel that injects capital and gets people to buy consoles and gets, the Jim Cramers of the world back to interviewing video game executives on his stupid MSNBC show. So it's like, that's great that GTA 6 is going to be successful. And we've talked about this before, that it's like, one that's unsustainable and that it just shouldn't happen. And too much is riding on GTA 6. Yeah. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing game, but are you, I don't know. Is it really going to be that much better than other amazing games that have come out? Like, I don't think so. It's just hotly anticipated, more anticipated than anything else, because it's a famous series and there hasn't been one for 10 years. And I think this was partially felt in the run up to Red Dead Redemption 2, but Red Dead Redemption 2, while massive, Red Dead does not have the same following or sort of fame as Grand Theft Auto. So you have all that. I think so. It's interesting that Karch spoke about layoffs, because we know that one of the reasons games are so expensive, their budgets are so big, is because you have a lot of people working on them. So you have a lot of people to pay, and it's sort of like a chicken and the egg thing, it feels like, because you have to have all those people because games are really big and expensive to make, because they're really big and complicated. But it's like, well, who's telling you that games have to be this big and complicated that necessitates 1,000-person development team, which then necessitates this gigantic budget to pay for it all? It's like, what necessitates all that? So I think it's interesting that he says that, because I'm curious if he's referencing like having to hire so many people to fulfill this like promise of amazing visuals and 100-hour playtimes, and then after that game comes out, like with Veilguard or whatever, you have to lay off people, or then people are laid off down the road because that business model isn't sustainable. I'm curious if that's what he was referencing specifically. I don't know. I also thought it was interesting that he said, his comment about, he said Space Marines 2's success was that it didn't nickel and dime players. I was curious if that wasn't like a red meat comment, like in politics, tossing it out to people. Not that he's being patronizing, but I think there are people out there that I like that line, and I think there are people out there that like that line as well. But you have to be afraid of, I think, making that argument, because then Andrew Wilson, who we'll talk about in a little bit, can turn around and go FIFA, and it's like, okay. So as soon as you say,
and then Europe keeps EA afloat.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, as soon as you say, well, I think my game was successful because it isn't nickel and dime, all a person has to do is show games that are super popular right now that nickel and dime you. Yeah. And it's like, okay, then so the argument you have to make is you have to, I think, I put in my notes here, the trick is arguing that a game's financial success should be secondary to its success as a piece of art and entertainment. That there is more meaning in those things than there is in its financial success. And I think that's partially political and ideological. And I think if you really like video games, that's sort of the thing you have to argue. Because as soon as Matthew Karch says, well, Space Marine 2 was successful because it didn't nickel and dime people, which may be partially true. I'm sure there are people that I like this because there's not a whole lot of microtransactions. Yeah. Sure. But again, like Andrew Wilson turns around and goes Madden, and the debate's over. Yes. So what you have to do to respond to that is go, no, Andrew Wilson, because I think if you, in an alternate universe where people are playing a Madden that has live services completely, ripped from it and tossed into a volcano somewhere, and instead you just have a good football simulation game, and you offered that to people, I think people would pick that one. And I don't have anything to prove that, except I think people like things that are better than things that are bad. Yeah. And I think Madden's bad. So Anyway, maybe that's pedantic of me, but I just don't think so. Because I don't know. I don't always like that argument when people point to a game that like doesn't have microtransactions and go, that's why it's successful. And it's like, okay, well, maybe partially, but the argument has to be bigger and more nuanced than that. Because again, not to repeat myself, I'll pick a different CEO. I don't know, fucking Eves could point at Rainbow Six Siege and be like, oh, Rainbow Six, microtransactions. And it's like your entire argument's donezo. Yeah. Or Blizzard could point at any of their games. Yeah. Or Riot could go Valorant and all of a sudden you're donezo. Yeah, yeah. Because so it's like you have to think of a better argument there as to why certain games are successful. Space Marines 2 success is interesting. I think it's partially successful because Warhammer games, there's never been like I don't know, maybe there has. Maybe one of the RTS, probably one of the RTS games. But Warhammer is like this universe that seems like it's a perfect fit for video games, but the video games are always okay. They're never like really good. Yeah. And like I said, I'm sure some of the RTSs are probably really good from the past, but I think that's one of the reasons why Space Marine 2 was a lot of people were excited for it. Was it kind of like it's a obvious idea. You take this cool thing called a Space Marine and you play as that thing and you get to rip apart aliens and shoot big guns at them.
Don't forget it's co-op.
And it's co-op. So yes, so it's like you've got some simple concepts there. And I think that's an easy thing to sell. Hey, that's a power fantasy where you're this guy in massive armor and you have it's Gears of War, it's third-person shooter, and it's co-op. And it's $60. It's not $70. Yeah. So you don't have that price. So that price is a little bit easier to swallow, maybe. So yeah. So I think there are a lot of and yeah, maybe it is a simpler game. It's like you don't have to worry about. There are sort of live service elements, but those things are easily ignorable if you want to. They're more easily ignorable than like Call of Duty or previous Battlefields have been. But anyway, so sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there.
No, that's all right, because we're kind of we're in the realm of the discussion of things relating to it.
Yeah. But if, I don't know, I want people to have jobs, obviously working in the games industry. It's weird saying that game budgets need to go down because I partially know that also means where are all these people going to work? Mm-hmm. You know, you think about all these contract studios like in Southeast Asia or in Canada, like Keywords or whatever, like wherever, all these contract studios. And it's like, where are they? If game budgets go down because the number of people working on games go down, where are all those people? Are they all going to have to start developing their own games? Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's going to be a tough situation. But the other problem is that the current situation we're in is also unsustainable. So it's like, I don't know what the solution is. Maybe it's like a wholesale change in the entire market. Maybe if those contract studios do have to make their own games, and let's say Valve says, okay, we're going to go to 1288 like Epic. Who knows how that changes the industry? Who knows how that changes the math for smaller studios when they put games on Steam? You know, so maybe it's something like that where the change has to be more radical, which I would advocate for. I don't know. Or maybe maybe, you know, there's another people go to GOG or something and try to create more competition between the PC storefronts. I don't know. But I'm thinking like 10 steps ahead because that's in a future where game budgets do come down. But what can't happen is game budgets continue to rise and Strauss-Zelnick can have his little Kendrick Lamar moment where he's in the spotlight and he gets to say whatever he wants and be cool because no one knows if he's going to charge $90 for GTA 6, which will be really annoying if it happens. And again, I think if something like that were to happen, if GTA 6 comes out and it's $90, right, for the standard edition, Strauss-Zelnick is going to make the argument, well, we think this is a $90 game. And if it's you and me having that conversation, it's one thing. If it's Strauss, I'm going to say, no.
No.
You cannot allow the industry to get to a point where average AAA releases cost $90 a pop.
Right.
You got to try and wind that down. If we want to talk about Like, how much would you pay for Witcher or whatever? That's a more complicated discussion. I think there's a distinction there. How much would you play for Baldur's Gate 3? It's like, I don't know. How do you... it's hard to put a monetary worth to some massive piece of art, right? But like Strauss Zelnick's is very simple. It's like, well, the worth is what you're willing to pay. And it's like, listen, Strauss, the problem is that that you can't... I don't know, that games just shouldn't cost that much. The infrastructure shouldn't be there that a game needs to cost that much to make, to break even or something like that. Because at that point, the industry is just broken and things are way too expensive. Things need to come back down, So it's like, how much is a movie ticket worth to you? I don't know. But if all of a sudden all movie tickets are worth or cost $100, then humanity is in a spot where things are just dumb and need fixing, not where it's, well, it's just how much it's worth. I think that's a cop out for a much more complicated discussion. Were you going to say something?
I think that things do need to level out though, as far as the, I think that my hope is that if you spend less on a game, you create a game that, hold on, let me back up. I'm going to use a different analogy here. So there's always been the PC versus console debate. Consoles have the restriction of, this is what you got. You have to build what you have with this.
Yeah.
PCs, limitless, whatever. If companies can find it in themselves to create something within a certain frame, the returns on it, if successful, are going to be way bigger, which allows you to pay these people enough money that is the hope. And I think that there are 2 games specifically that are coming out very soon that when I looked into, I was extremely surprised by their costs compared to South of Midnight we've already talked about.
Yeah, isn't South of Midnight like 50 or 40?
$39.99.
See, that almost makes no sense.
Because we've seen the trailers. Like the game looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like it looks really good. The other one is Expedition 33.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which is also not an independent game, but it's a first time game. But that game is also, I believe, like $40 or $50.
Yeah.
And I know you've seen that game in action.
Yep.
It looks stunning, and to achieve that level of quality out of a game with, we don't know the budgets, but with what we presumably believe is less of a budget than GTA 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I know there's been a sizable amount of hype for these 2 games. I hope that these 2 games are another example of you not having to spend much to make quality.
No, yeah, that's a good
get
point.
Your returns back.
Yeah, because if games like that are successful, games with, because I don't know what those games budgets are, but it does seem like I don't know, if that's what they're priced at, then there's no way their budgets are $300 million, right?
Right.
Because that would just be a fool's errand to sell a $300 million game at $40, right? It feels like that would be true.
Right.
So yeah, if these sort of scaled down titles, if like Space Marine 2, if there's a couple Space Marine 2s every year, starting with last year or whatever, and maybe there was a few before then that I'm just not thinking.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of mid-level reaction that I think everybody hopes for, that instead of games getting more expensive and Strauss Zelnick is like, oh, well, GTA 7 is going to be $150 and the budget's going to be, $750 million.
Yeah.
Instead of it just keep going up and up and up until nobody can afford a game anymore. It's like, why don't we scale that down? And if some AAA companies insist on having $300 million budgets, fine, whatever. But that the middle part of the market, you can make a good game, you could sell it at that mid price, and it can still be good. It's not like people are going to be uninterested in it. Yeah, that's a good point. And if South of Midnight sells really well, if Expedition 33 sells really well, man, that would make, because we've talked about sort of where's the AA market?
Yeah.
Where has it gone? Yeah. And that's a big, complex conversation. But yeah, between like Space Marine 2, those 2 games, Helldivers 2, or hell, Astrobot, right? You may consider Astrobot AAA from like a tech standpoint,
Sure,
but from a budgetary standpoint, I don't know.
Also from the greater public's visual standpoint, like they probably look at Astrobot and just, oh, that's a game for kids,
It's
you
cute,
know, just
yeah.
whatever, you know, and they don't
Yeah.
actually take it seriously because you reach a threshold in your age where things become, oh, that's for kids, instead of just not understanding. Like, you know, I don't know how many times I suggest the Lego games to everybody because it's like, no, they're just really solid games,
Yeah.
really fun to play around with. Like, it doesn't matter if it's for kids or not. Like, it's still a good game, but societal norms, prevent that from happening. But I think a lot more games would be successful if a lot of people got over that. Like,
yes, you're.
I mean, I'm stating something very obvious, but but I don't think we would be in too much of this position if that was the case.
Yeah, I think, we're going off topic now, but who cares? Because it's our show, we can do whatever we want. But I think that's true with, like, I don't know. Like, I wonder if the average person sees Pillars of Eternity, sees an isometric RPG. Mm-hmm. Because, okay, let me rewind. We're doing a lot of rewinding here. Mm-hmm. Okay, because, like, for example, with Helldivers 2. So Helldivers 2 went third person, and that opened it up to a larger audience, right? Because people are more familiar with, and obviously the visuals were more realistic and more like in your face and intense than like sort of the more comedic top-down Helldivers. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that top-down camera angle can't sell, can't make a sustainable business, and can't make a good game. But I kind of wonder the same thing, like that big audience that played Helldivers 2, how many of those people would play the original Helldivers and enjoy it if they just sort of got past what they think is like a boring art direction, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
I think it's the same thing with like with old RPGs like Pillars of Eternity. Well, it's not an old RPG, but isometric RPGs maybe. I'm curious how many people, I don't know, it's like they see Pillars. How many casual people playing games see Pillars and they're like, oh, this looks super nerdy and boring just because of the art direction. But if they tried it out, played it, saw the writing, saw the mechanics there, and all of a sudden they would garner an appreciation for the art style.
Right.
Because it is, man, I wish I could vocalize this better. But there is like games, art directions are valid, if that makes sense. I think people look at older games sometimes and think that can't be good anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Maybe you're kind of saying this with Astrobot. Like they see a third-person platformer and they think that genre is old. Mm-hmm. It can't be fun anymore. But that's not true.
Right.
It's just, you can make a good one. Evidence, Astrobot, or isometric RPGs. Baldur's Gate in the late 90s? What? If you make that's boring. Yeah. Gaming has surpassed that, but it's like Pillars 1 and 2, you can,
And that did happen when Baldur's Gate won Game of the Year. Like, how many people afterwards, like, mostly brain dead streamers, were like, it's too slow. Like, how come I can't just, like, hack and slash things? And it's like, well...
I don't believe you that people said that.
Yes, they did.
I don't believe you.
Okay.
You're talking about the first Baldur's Gate,
no,
not
Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah.
Streamers way back in 1999.
No, I said a couple years ago when I won Game of the Year.
No, yeah, I know. I'm just in disbelief. It's okay if you dislike that.
Yeah, right. But...
It's another thing to say that it's intrinsically bad because of the style, right? There's a distinction there. Anyway, yeah, okay. Off topic, but that's fine. Okay, moving on to I referenced Andrew Wilson. EA says Dragon Age Veilguard performed poor because it wasn't live service. Maybe that's, I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second. So during an earnings call with I don't know, fucking EA
the
CEO,
main villain of Mirror's Edge Catalyst.
EA CEO Andrew Wilson, Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, and the Borg Collective spoke about EA's underperforming quarter, saying, quote, I hate reading these goddamn parodies.
You want me to read it?
No, it's just, there's just so it's just... I'll read it. In order to break out beyond the core audience, games need to directly connect to the evolving demand of players who increasingly seek shared world features and deeper engagement alongside high-quality narratives in this beloved category. Electronic Arts had Electronic Arts had a high quality launch, or excuse me, Dragon Age had a high quality launch and was well received, well reviewed by critics and those who played. However, it did not resonate with a broad enough audience in this highly competitive market. Stuart Canfield, EA CFO, also spoke about Q3, saying that on a trailing 12-month business, live services are 74% of EA's business, and then followed that up with saying, "Let me start with Dragon Age Veilguard. Historically, blockbuster storytelling has been the primary way our industry brought beloved IP to players. The game's financial performance highlights the evolving industry landscape and reinforces the importance of our actions to reallocate resources towards our most significant and highest potential opportunities." Okay, see, so I had forgotten about this quote because that's the argument I'm talking about. Matthew Karch can say, "Hey, look, Space Marine 2, no microtransactions. That's why people bought it." And then Stuart Canfield can push his glasses up his nose and say, "Oh, you want to bet? Because 74% of our business, which is way more than Saber Interactive." And not that I agree with that, but the math is in favor of Stuart Canfield.
Right.
The math is wrong, immoral, predatory, and sucks, but mathematically,
yeah, I know.
he is correct. But anyway, so let's, I don't know. So you look stressed.
Maybe I have underdog mindset. I started getting mad, just tired. And from the second, the guy, Stuart Canfield?
Yeah. More like Stuart Crapfield. Sorry.
Maybe it's because I have slight ADHD and I see patterns, but patterns are, I think essential to like live. And there are always, you can't consistently improve. There's always a plateau. Yes. And maybe that 73% is your plateau. You cannot have 100% of constant microtransactions. So you need not that I think that Veilguard doesn't deserve 100% of people buying it or, whatever.
Sure.
But that 30%, you need that as well. You can't just rest your laurels on the 70%.
Yeah, if you want to be a diverse business.
Right. Yes, exactly. You can't have one without the other. Like you literally just can't. Because trends change, people move on. If you're going to just continue to do like FIFA or Madden, like granted, yes, I understand those are franchises that can potentially last forever, but who's to say that someone won't decide to make a different football game at one point? Sure. Like who decides to like buy the license and make a different game and that game becomes the hit and then FIFA falls off.
Yeah.
What are you going to have after that? You need your separate games, but the way that he spoke made it seem like, yes, the 70%, and I know it's exactly what he's saying, the 70%, 73%, whatever, we need to focus on this to grow it to 100%. So this 30% of games, the Battlefield, we have the
BioWare,
Motive, BioWare, EA Motive, Criterion, what like
Respawn. Well, they have Apex Legends, but
it's like what. We don't need that 30%. So, yes, you do, because your 30% is probably helping you to make that 70%, which is only one of their games, FIFA.
Yeah.
Because they don't make NBA Live anymore.
No, but it's probably
or
FIFA.
Elite, or not Elite. They changed the name twice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I don't know how much they get from it's probably in their financials, maybe, how much they get from Respawn. But a chunk of it's FIFA, a chunk of it's Madden. And then after that, I'm sure there's probably a drop-off a little bit. Because
you only played College Football 25.
This year, yeah. And a lot of people bought College Football 25. But and they even acknowledged this in their earnings call. They talked about how somebody asked, like, "Hey, we're not expecting the same kind of response next year, right?" And showing incredible foresight, I'm pretty sure Andrew Wilson was like, "Yeah, we think we experienced outsized growth this year on college," and it's like, yeah, duh, because you hadn't made one in 10 years, fucking genius. Yes, so it's like I'm not gonna buy college football next year because college football 25 is gonna be perfect. I won't have roster updates, but who gives a shit? People are transferring all the time anyway in college football, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, right. Nothing matters. Brent Venables is gonna be fired. I'm not gonna yell about Oklahoma Sooners right now, but. Sorry, you were...
No, I was just going to ask, because whenever I hear microtransactions when it comes to EA or like what entails it, it's always FIFA. It's never really Madden, and it's never really... So I'm not... I guess I'm not sure of what microtransactions entail in Madden.
Oh, it's the same. It's the same thing.
It's the same
There's
thing?
an ultimate team, but instead of doing soccer, you do football.
Because like, yeah, I always hear about NBA 2K and I always hear about FIFA, but I never hear about Madden.
It's the same. It's the same. And even in College Football 25 was the same thing. Your ultimate team was cards you bought from card packs, and then the cards had ratings, and so it worked. It's like a 1-to. There may be slight differences in how they do different things, but I think by and large it's basically the same mechanical system. But so like obviously this is like, I don't know, these guys are brain dead. Maybe that's harsh, but it's just like, what do you want from your company, I guess, is the question. Because like, I don't know, I think of, maybe this may be a bad analogy because I'm coming up with it off the top of my head, but there's Sony Picture Classics that do like Woody Allen films and stuff like that, right? And those movies will never make the amount of money that like Sony's Spider-Man movies were making, or Sony's other big budget movies were making. So why does Sony do it? Why even put in the effort to have somewhere in Sony, somebody thinks that making, not that all Woody Allen movies, it's the only guy I can think of, who he's obviously flawed to say the least.
Yes.
but somebody in Sony thinks that putting out movies that are more cerebral, cultural, whatever, closer to cinema, not like action schlock, somebody thinks that's important to do, so they do it. Fox Searchlight, right? Or 20th Century Searchlight Pictures, whatever it was. I don't know if that division is still around anymore, but that was the same kind of thing where they did like smaller budget movies. So the point I'm trying to make here is you have, I think in other industries, examples of production companies or whatever that have the big budget movies with, the big summer blockbusters, and then they save a portion of their business for movies that may not draw people to the theater, but I think are artistically, culturally just as relevant, right? And so what's their mentality behind that? I don't know. Somebody must think it's worthwhile to have that in the business. So it's like at EA, you have to decide what you want to be. Because right now you sell you're a microtransaction company. You're not a game company, like at this point. So that's fine. So you have to decide, because BioWare is never going to make a game that is as profitable as FIFA. It never will.
Never will.
It does not matter if tomorrow BioWare surprised us by releasing Baldur's Gate 4 and it was 1,000,000 times better than Baldur's Gate 3. It would not make as much money, near as much money, as Call of Duty or FIFA, right? Or whatever, EAFC.
Right.
Whatever it's called.
And that's not to mention the fact that if they do manage to do that, now you've screwed yourself because you have locked BioWare into working on that and only that. Like, the large chunk of your BioWare force can now only work on the thing that they made that is now a live service, like longevity game. Yeah. And so you've just ruled out another one of your developers to make anything else.
So, so what I'm trying to say is, it's like, if you have to decide, do you want your company to be diverse or not? Because no matter what you do with BioWare, unless they work on EAFC, they're not going to make as much money, because the nature of single player games is that they will never have that kind of market, because there are not that many, for whatever reason, there are not that many people interested. It is the nature of humanity, right? For some reason, there are only a certain number of people on Earth that are interested in baseball. Some people just don't care, because human beings have different tastes. And no matter how big the sport gets, it will never have a 100% everybody on the planet is watching and caring about it, because some people just think it sucks or it's boring or whatever. And that's just part of the human experience. So it's like, this is a phenomenon that we understand. Sports, EAFC is one of the most popular games in the world. It's going to make more money for a bunch of different reasons. Those reasons, to me, the money that it makes does not make it more important, I think, obviously. But to get back on track here, I think it's like, you have to get past this idea that you have to try and find a space where BioWare can make single player RPGs and also somehow make around the same money that your sports games are making, because it's just an impossibility. It's not going to work. So you can either accept it and have your Sony Picture Classics division, where you know it's not going to make a ton of money, but you also know what do you get from that trade-off? You get games that are meaningful, tell good stories, win Game of the Year, win awards. Veilguard wasn't very good. That doesn't mean BioWare all of a sudden sucks. Sometimes you make a bad game, whatever. So it's like, also, you have to maybe scale down those budgets. Maybe the next Mass Effect, you don't let it become a $400 million game. Maybe you keep it, I don't know.
And we talked about it last week, how within the span of 5 years, we got 6 years, we got 3 Mass Effect games.
Yeah. And I don't, the tricky thing about that is like, I think there are more people at BioWare. You're correct. I'm not trying to poo-poo what you're saying.
Right.
But it's like there were more people at BioWare, and
sure,
also
I
like
crunch
crunch and stuff like that. Is
well, that is also true. Yes.
Yeah.
But overlooked.
But
that.
you are correct in the idea that like, is there a way where we can make games quicker? I'm sure there's a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you can just look at the entire workforce after COVID. It's like work for home, like efficiency shot up because people weren't in a position that they hated, so work got done quicker.
Yeah, but with EA, it's like you just have to get over it, and if you don't, then I don't know, sell BioWare, because it's not going to do the thing, and I don't know if that's even possible, but let's just spitball it and say it is. To me, you're better off just selling it off, that or throwing it to work on EAFC bullshit, because it's never going to be the profit center that your sports games are.
Right.
So you can get over it and give them the support they need to do the games that matter. And in my opinion, the games that BioWare makes are more worthwhile to the human experience than EAFC is. Partially because EAFC is so full of predatory bullshit now. All sports games are. That doesn't mean that sports games don't matter at all. I think sports games matter a lot. But the people that make them, the people that publish them, aren't worried about the integrity of their sports games. But if that's not what you want to do, if you don't want to give BioWare the support to make their stuff, then sell it. Give it to somebody else who will take it on. I don't know. Don't shut it down. I don't want people to lose jobs. But it's just like, it makes me roll my eyes, because it would be like if you're, I don't know. Let me think of a really stupid analogy. It'd be like, I don't know, if like Disneyland, you're at Disneyland and there's like a Coke machine, right? And then across the street from that Coke machine, there's Space Mountain. And Bob Iger is like, Space Mountain generated 75% of Disneyland's, there'd probably have to be more. Space Mountain generated 99% of Disneyland's revenue this quarter. It was amazing.
Impressive.
But this Coke machine over here, it only did 1%. So we're going to have to figure out how to make this Coke machine generate as much revenue as Space Mountain. But that doesn't make sense, because those things those things are complete opposite businesses. Right? And in that case, the analogy breaks down, because I'm saying a Coke is BioWare, so it doesn't really make sense. But the point I'm trying to make here is like you can't get them to do the same thing, because they're not the same thing. Sorry, I'm going in circles here, because it's just so infuriating to hear. And to clarify, there were, like, I saw Jason Schreier post on Blue Sky, and other people were like, I don't know, is EA really saying directly that Dragon Age Veilguard didn't do as well because it didn't have live service stuff? I feel like they are. That's what they're kind of implying here, which is dumb. Because if anything, the live service stuff that happened with Dragon Age probably only hurt development.
Yes.
Didn't benefit it. So I don't know. What EA needs to do is let BioWare cook and leave them the fuck alone. I think about what's Ken Levine's studio, Ghost Story Games.
Oh yeah, I think so. I will never not say it's irrational, like immediately, like Irrational Games, and it's like, oh, whoops. Yeah, and it's like, I think they're owned by 2K, I think. And they're like a little studio. Ghost Story Games. Yeah.
Ghost Story Games.
Oh, it was Irrational Games. I didn't know.
And because he used to run Irrational, and then he left after BioWare Infinite, I think. And then anyway,
whatever.
What I'm trying to get to here is like, you never hear Strauss Zelnick talk about Ghost Story Games, because it just doesn't matter. Because he's not trying to make Ghost Story Games make as much money as GTA 6, because that's an impossibility right now. That's a dumb goal to have. So it's either you allow Ghost Story Games to do their thing, you know the money you're going to get from that investment is not going to be near the money you get from NBA 2K or Rockstar,
Right.
but you're okay with that because you have diverse interests in how you handle your entertainment products, and you move forward with your business, or you decide it's going to be all Rockstar and NBA, and you let Ghost Story Games go. That's not what I want, but it's just this hemming and hawing over what are we going to do? Live service mechanics, you know, patting investors on the bottom, you know, and you know, letting them know that don't worry, we're not going to let you down. Don't freak out. It's just like, oh my God, stop it. Cause it's so freaking irrational. Speaking of, anyway, sorry. Okay. I think I'm done.
Done with the rants.
Done screaming about that. Yeah, that shit's just, it's disingenuous and it's stupid. We're at a minute 5. I think we'll end it there. You don't have any,
I don't have any tidbits. No, I'm sorry. Couldn't grab any this week.
That's okay.
And it's also like, even though I'm on Blue Sky, I haven't got to the habit of going on there, but thankfully it's picking up now. So the news is like kind of like coming quicker and more diverse and whatnot. But I haven't been able to grab I'm sorry, Mr. Piscatella. I haven't been able to grab like the MPDs or well, circa numbers.
We haven't done that in a while.
I just lost track of when he like posts them and whatnot. I just need to keep a bigger eye on it. So
we'll have him on the show next week.
My fault.
So.
Yeah, we'll have him on the show next week.
Follow us, youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/the gaming discourse. And new video hopefully soon-ish. Follow us on Patreon and I'll give you updates. We'll see you next week. Bye.